I'm a Muslim, and as I was kind of describe, I was trying to explain kind of a bit like why I believe and what some of the sort of major misconceptions are about God and maybe Islam, Christianity.
Well, I'm happy to hear why you believe, because I mean that's the thing. I'm more concerned about why people believe than what they believe. You know, if there's good reasons to believe something, that's the case.
Yeah, I agree. So I started off as an idol worshipper. You know, I'm basically Hindu, and then for a while I was an atheist. I did, you know, I couldn't see the evidence for God, and you know, it was a bit confused for me. And then I came across the Quran and started reading that, and I was you know, convinced by that. And I've been sort of like reading the Quran for the past sort of 10, 12 years, and it kind of you know, it all makes sense now to me, in that, you know, whatever kind of God has revealed in His revelations that is given to you know, to what we call prophets. It all makes sense, and you know,
I'm confused because
I'm no longer.
Nothing in this so far explains why you believe it. You're just telling us that you read the Quran and now it all makes sense.
Yeah, what was it in the Quran that you really found convincing that you hadn't read in other books?
The first thing was that it was quite simple. There was only one God, and the religion was quite simple. You know, you worship God, you do good. You know,
well,
you live a good life, and then
I can understand how, coming from Hinduism, you perhaps found the idea that there was only one God more appealing. But the question is, why do you think there's one God and not none?
Because I mean, it probably question. Yeah, I question that, because, you know, how come there's, you know, there could be more than one God, and maybe this the God of Islam, yeah, is just another God, and that, you know, other people are just worshiping. But then when I thought, I say it took me quite a long time to figure it out, but it comes down, for me, it came down to what the definition of God is. And for me, the definition of God is a being, yeah, who's created absolutely everything.
Okay,
you know,
so
reality,
what reason do you have to believe that there is in fact a being who created everything?
Well, just my existence, and we read the Quran, how God sort of tells us, you know, about our reality, about the world, the physical world. Well, they all kind of all make sense.
No, the fact that there's a book that offers an explanation is independent from why you accept that explanation. So when I say, what reason do you have to believe that there is some being who created everything, you can't just say, oh, my existence, because that's the thing we're trying to explain. You haven't made any connection. So you exist and the universe exists, and we're looking for some explanation for perhaps why you and the universe exist. What is it that makes you convinced that there is one being who did this?
Yeah, when it comes to one being that did this, it comes down to what your definition of God is.
No, it doesn't. God hasn't entered the equation. You're saying that you believe that there's a being who created the universe. Now that could be defined as a God or not. I'm saying, what makes you think it's a being who created the universe?
It's basically what's in the Quran. You know, first I have to sort of, like, you know, entertain the idea.
What difference does it make what the Quran says? The fact that the book makes a claim doesn't tell you why you should accept the claim.
Yeah, but actually the book does tell you why you should accept the claim.
Okay, then what's the reason why we should accept the claim?
Well, the book is saying, yeah, this book, yeah, is from God, and this is the truth. That's what
there's another book there's another book that says it's from God and it's the truth. How do you tell the difference?
There's lots of books that say that.
Yeah, you read them. You know,
I have.
I'm open to reading any book.
I have read them. I don't find either of them to be true or good or useful or sufficient evidence for the idea that there's a being who created anything.
Yeah, but so have you read the Quran?
Yes.
I haven't.
And have you read the
in English? You know, in English.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, I mean, when I say I've read quite a lot, and it clearly defines who God is, and it says, this book is from God, yeah, and
I don't. Why should I care? Because I don't care what the book says. If I could write a book that defines God and says it's true, but that doesn't mean it is true, and it doesn't mean we have a good reason. So I keep asking, what reason do we have to believe that everything was created by a being?
Yeah, I'm saying the things they described in the Quran, yeah, about our reality, about the physical world, it all makes sense. It all seems true.
Well, it's not all true, but even if it were all true, that doesn't mean that its explanation that a God did it is true. The fact that let's say I list 10 things and 9 of them are true. Does that tell you whether or not the 10th one is true?
No, I don't. You got to look at each claim.
I'm sorry?
You got to look at each thing, yeah?
Right, you got to look at each claim. So if you point to the Quran and you say, hey, this seems like a reasonable explanation for this or that, what is the reasonable explanation that should make anyone convinced that a being created everything?
Yeah, like I said, when I look at my reality, what feelings I have, what experiences I have, what the physical world is like, basically what my reality is like. Yeah, it all makes sense when you read the Quran. Yeah, and you understand the idea of God in the Quran.
Do you care whether or not what you believe is true?
Of course I do.
Okay. Then wouldn't that mean that you would make use of the methods that are most reliable at getting to truth?
Yeah.
Okay. So what is your method for getting to the truth about whether or not there's a God?
Well, I say the first thing is, for me, yeah, what the definition of God is, it should be clear. I mean, if I look at the definition of God, yeah, which the Quran, yeah, is the creator of absolutely everything.
Okay. What is the method? What is the method? If you define God as the creator of everything, what is the method by which you determine that there is in fact a God who created everything? What's the method?
The method, the Quran makes a claim that there's certain things like the creation of life. God says only He can do that.
How do you know that God says that? I say the Quran says that, but how do you know that that's what God says?
I don't know. I just have to assume this is first. I have to assume
okay.
This is
So your method for getting to the truth is to assume that the Quran is true.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's not a method for finding the truth. Because I can assume that the Bible is true, I could assume that the Quran is true, I could assume that Harry Potter is true. Assuming that it's true demonstrates that you don't actually care about whether or not it's true.
No, I'm saying you have to start off with an assumption, yeah.
You don't. No, you don't have to start with an assumption. That's called poisoning the well. That's how you're beginning with some sort of conclusion about this and trying to find the thing that fits your conclusion the best.
No, sorry. What I'm saying, okay, I'm reading the Quran here. I'm looking at each claim, and claim by claim, yeah. If everything has so far turned out to be true.
So what? I can make 9 claims, and they turn out to be true. Does that mean the 10th claim is true?
That's fine.
If you don't get to say I found something true here, therefore the claim that there is a God who made everything is also true. That is fallacious.
Yeah, no. What I'm trying to say is like you look at all the claims and. On top of all the claims, yeah, what way
sure.
Also it says
Sam, one of the claims is that there's a God. How did you determine that claim is true?
Well, I can never. It tells me to look at my reality, and based on that, I believe there is a God. But if I look at my reality, yeah, there's processes going on.
We're getting nowhere, Sam, because Sam, you just keep telling us what you believe. You refuse or cannot give an explanation for why you believe it.
Well, you said it made sense, but that's really vague. Like, what is it about the Quran that makes sense? Whereas, because Christianity also says there's one God who created everything, and Hinduism.
It's the same God.
It's the same God. How did you determine that?
Because in the Quran it says so.
Okay. How did you determine that it's actually true?
I can never determine. I can only go by what the Quran says. I can.
No. To say I can only go by the Quran says is simply wrong, because I don't have to go by what the Quran says. I can go by what methods lead to truth, and then I can say I don't know whether or not there's a being who created anything.
The problem is when it comes to God, you can't go by whatever method you have, because
that's what you're doing. That's what you're doing. When it comes to God, you are going by whatever method feels best to you.
Yeah, but I'm using my reasoning and my rationality.
No, you're rational. You are definitely rationalizing, but that doesn't mean that you are being rational or exercising reason, which is why I've asked probably 10, 15 times why you believe X, and you keep telling me what you believe, or that the Quran says so. And then when I ask why we should believe the Quran, you say because the Quran.
No, I'm saying because so far, when the Quran describes about our, physical reality, it's turned out to be true. So I'm trying to say the certain claims that the Quran makes, and it turned out to be true.
Yeah.
If there was somebody in there that was false, I'd say, okay, well, this is God can't make a mistake. So, well, my day with God is a perfect being. So if God made a mistake, then it can't be revelation. So
how do you know that God's a perfect being?
Because when you understand the concept of God, then God can only be a perfect being.
Says who?
God says himself.
In the Quran.
I mean, you see, I'm trying to say is that you have to go through a process where you sort of understand the definition of God.
Yeah. So first of all, there are many different definitions for God. There are many different.
True.
Yeah. So there's not a definition for God, but your definition of God means that God's perfect. And when we asked you why you come to that, you don't give us an explanation. What makes you think that God is perfect?
Because he says so.
How do you know what God says?
Because I believe that the Quran is a revelation of God.
Why do you believe the Quran is the revelation of God?
Because it says so.
Goodbye.
It makes sense.
I can't go in circles anymore. I am a prophet from God. I just said so. Therefore, you need to believe it. Right?
Makes sense.
I'm here. Matt is God. Thus saith Matt. This idea, and this isn't, by the way, exclusive to Islam.
No, not at all.
It happens all the time with regard to the Bible. The Bible's true because the Bible says it's true.
That's why I'm wondering why is he a Muslim and not a Christian? Because the Christian book says exactly the same stuff that he mentioned that the Quran said. So why are you a Muslim?
And if you talk to Christian preachers, they'll happily point out that the Quran affirms the Bible, but the Bible would denounce the Quran, which means that the Quran of the two is necessarily false, even though they don't seem to also acknowledge that the Bible is also false.
Yeah, Side 10 made that argument, right?
There are people who are like, why didn't you ask him what things in the Quran are true? Because it's trivial to point to a list of things that are potentially true or can be interpreted as true. But that list, even if the Quran was absolutely true on everything that we could verify, that doesn't mean that it's true when it comes to a claim about a God, because you can't verify that, which is why he kept talking himself in circles.
Well, and a lot of the stuff I've seen these lists of the Quran predicted this scientific thing that we found out hundreds of years later, and it's all the same game of taking this really vague passage and saying, well, he's really talking about the orbits of planets or whatever, and people do that with Nostradamus, and they do that with all kinds of stuff. It sort of sounds like he's talking about this, therefore, it's a miracle, because how did it predict that?
Yeah, and you could go through and you could list problems with the Quran about advocating for violence or potential contradictions, and then you just get into this dialogue of, well, no, you're not interpreting it correctly. Or at the end of the day, you'll get some of them to say, well, you're not, you're reading it in English, so you're reading it. But now this guy is happy to say that the God of the Bible and the God of Islam are the same, and that's a losing strategy, because not only does he have no way and no attempt to defend that, he can't even defend why he thinks there's a God in the first place.
Yeah.
Other than oh, because this book says it, and I'm going to accept that this book is true because I've found this book to be true in other ways. I was reading it, and the world started making more sense. Well, here's a suggestion. Read some science books and read some books on argumentation and logic and reasoning, and the world will make even more sense. You will be less likely to fall in the traps of believing something without justification or on bad evidence.